Let's go, boys. All right.
I'm just telling the sheriff's guy about how Corrales, he's on.
Yeah, I don't like late. It is 7 o'clock, and I call the May 3rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Franklin County Planning Commission to order. Before we get into the meeting, I will turn things over to staff to discuss the meeting format.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight's meeting will be conducted through a hybrid in-person online meeting platform. Should an individual planning commission, well, actually, we don't have any attending via, so I'm not going to go ahead and read this part here. However, for folks in the public, please mute your phone if you're not speaking, or if you wish to comment or need clarification on a public hearing item, please send us an email at planninginquiry@franklincountywa, all one word, .gov before the public comment period closes. Once the public comment period has closed on said item, comments will not be included as part of the discussion. To those in attendance, please remember to speak into the microphone when addressing staff or public comment testimonies.
Will planning staff please roll call and announce whether or not we have a quorum?
Mike Corrales.
Here.
Mike Vincent.
Here.
Layton Lowe. Melinda Didier. Peter Harpster.
Here.
Manny Gutierrez.
Here.
Stacy Knifton.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Will staff in attendance please introduce yourselves?
Derek Broughton, Planning and Building Department Director.
Ryan Nelson, Planner 1.
Aaron Gunderson, Planner 1.
Okay, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance now. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm pretty sure that's what they're about.
What?
They've got a blown sprinklers just skimming into the road.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I'll move that we, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Second.
Commissioner Vincent has moved and Commissioner Knifton has seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the December 14th, 2021 and April 12th, 2022 meetings.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes from the December 14th, 2021, April 12th, 2022 meetings.
Who said that? Peter.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Knifton, it has been moved by Commissioner Mike Knifton and seconded by Commissioner Harpster. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. It is now time for the public hearing portion of our meeting. Good evening and welcome. I will turn things over briefly to our staff who will go over the ground rules for tonight's hearing.
Here are the ground rules for tonight's hybrid hearing. In-person public testimony will be divided into two groups, for and against / neutral. For and against / neutral. They will be called upon to speak during their allotted in-person public testimony section, giving their name for the audio record and position on the proposal. Call-in public testimony will be called upon individually during the call-in public testimony portion of the hearing, giving their name for the audio record as well as if they are in favor, neutral, or against the proposal. For those seeking to call in or communicate over the net, please mute audio when not speaking. Emailed comments received during the public hearing will be read into the record by staff after the call-in public testimony section of the hearing. All comments and questions shall be addressed to the Planning Commission and should be relevant to the application and not be of a personal nature. Each speaker shall have 5 minutes to provide testimony and shall speak into the microphone. Please avoid repetitive comments. If there are a large number of speakers who are part of a group or organization, please select a representative to speak on behalf of the group. Behavior such as clapping, booing, hissing, or remarks is prohibited. Every citizen here tonight should have the opportunity to testify without such distractions.
Are there any questions regarding the public hearing ground rules? Seeing none, we will turn for a moment to our commission members. Let us keep in mind that we are prohibited by law from communicating with members of the public on the subject matter of these hearings, except in these hearings. We also may not participate in decisions in which there is an appearance of conflict of interest to the average person. So let us take a minute to consider as to the matters which are before us for hearing today, whether we had any ex parte communications, whether we have any ownership interest in the properties, whether we have any business dealings with proponents or opponents of the matters, or whether we have business associates or immediate family who may either be benefited or harmed by a decision in these matters. Are there any commission members who have a declaration at this time regarding any of the items on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I have a declaration for the record. I have had business dealings with both principals on item number 1 and item number 2. Mr. Underwood, I've done some business with him, remodeling probably at least an office building 10 years ago, something like that. And Mr. Kelly, who owns Lamona Properties, item number 2, we've done some ag business together for the last, off and on for the last 25 years.
Got it?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Once again, I work for the applicant's representative for items 1 and 2, so I'll be recusing myself from both of those items.
Okay. Anyone else? I have a declaration on item 1. Rich Underwood is a property neighbor of mine, and I know him. He's an acquaintance. Okay, let the record show that Commissioner Vincent, Commissioner Harpster, and Commissioner Corrales have declarations, but only Mr. Harpster is going to recuse himself. Okay. Yes. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who will object to any commission member hearing any of these items on the agenda? None. Let the record show there were no objections. The order of the hearing will be as follows. Planning staff shall provide a staff report. The commissioners may ask questions of staff. The applicant or applicant's representatives. Presentation. In-person public testimony for, against, or neutral regarding the project. Call-in public testimony for, against, or neutral regarding the project. Email public testimony for, against, or neutral regarding the project, if any, to be read into the record by staff. Final staff comments. Clarification of public statements that occurred during the testimony portion of the public hearing. Close the public hearing and Planning Commission discussion of the proposed action. Are there any procedural questions before we begin the public hearing? Seeing none, we will proceed. Item 1 is a public hearing for file ZC 2022-01, SEPA 2022-7, a proposal to rezone one parcel comprising approximately 156.81 acres from the current designation of Ag Production 20, AP 20, to Rural Community 1. I declare the public hearing for CZ 2022-1, SEPA 2022-07 to be open at 7:09. May we have staff present the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, this is a zone change request for approximately 156 acres, just over, from AP 20 to RC1. Oh, I love this. Okay. So the current parcel numbers for this property, I think that got short platted, didn't it?
Yeah, there's a record survey
That's what it was, okay.
Yeah.
That's right, because that line went, yeah. So originally, the property, half was in AP 20, outside of,
No, this is all, was an AP 20, is what they did is they did a record survey because of the item that'll be next month's meeting, the subdivision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Okay, that must have been a different one. We've been doing a lot of these lately, so I get a mix and I apologize if I confuse projects. The property is generally located south of Columbia River Road, west of Fraser Drive, north of South Landing Road, east of the Columbia River. Comp plan is rural shoreline development. Property size is 156.81 acres. Current zoning's AP 20, and the request is to change to RC1, Rural Community 1. So this is the way the property now lays out. There's two separate parcels. So that's done through a record of survey, not through my office. That's why I was a little confused. Again, this is the zoning, the surrounding zoning. Everything in that white kind of, yeah, white is AP 20. RC1 is the darker, and then RC5, 5-acre minimums, is the lighter tan, and then RR5's got the hash marks going through it. As mentioned, AP 20 is the current zoning. Minimum lot size for the current zoning district is 20 acres with limited exceptions, while the minimum lot size for the proposed zoning district will be RC1 or 1 acre. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan designation of rural shoreline development, and the rezone will allow for more intensive use of the land as refers to density. However, under the AP 20, which we'll see in a slide, AP 20 allows for a lot more uses, but your lot densities. So in RC1, you're allowed 3 permitted uses, and AP 20, you're permitted 6. And then the allowed accessory uses is only 10 in the RC1, whereas there's accessory uses is more restricted with only 10 conditional uses, sorry, not accessory uses, and 25 conditional uses potentially allowed in the AP 20. So like I said, it's a much, other than density, it's a much more restrictive designation in the AP 20. Here we have the purpose for the RC1 district, and generally large lot residential uses is the primary intent of that area. Characterized by a mixture of half-acre to 5-acre residential developments. This is the rural shoreline comp plan designation. Scattered single-family residence, small farms, and places where residential developments are expected to continue to occur. The existing developments were created through traditional county subdivision and short plat guidelines, and the maximum residential density for this area ranges from 1 unit per acre to 1 per 5. This designation provides for the infill development and redevelopment of lands with the intention that this area be exclusively residential in nature. It's also technically defined as a LAMR, local area more intense rural development, with the designation of Columbia River West area. And this is an area that was created through those, like the RC5, I think, was created through that. It's to the south, and then that RR5 that was over to the southeast. Those are all LAMRs. They're areas that don't, so the ones across the line outside of the rural shoreline are LAMRs. This is this area is now starting to really start to develop into where the Lammerts are being blended in with other residential development, that the gaps between the various Lammerts that existed out there are being infilled. Okay, yeah, this was a comment, thought I removed this slide, but this was a comment that was received regarding things that aren't really applicable at this stage, so it's a little ahead of the game, but it's a request to ensure that river shore access is maintained. And so, but that's the only comment we got from the public on this. So that's one public comment was regarding concerns related to river access. If that's an issue, it would be more appropriately addressed at the time of subdivision, should a subdivision occur. A rezone is not when you activate that type of requirements. Department of Ecology, Franklin County Public Works, and Washington State Department of Transportation. On rezones, we often don't get a lot of comments. Again, it's because they save their comments more for at the time of actual site development. This is all speculative at this time. It could sit there as RC1 forever. But once you want to subdivide or something like that, that's when it becomes, to these agencies, something that they need to actually address or deal with. After completion of open public hearing on a petition for reclassification of property, the planning commission shall make and enter findings of the record and conclusions thereof with support the recommendation, find whether or not. So these are the categories that you're supposed to be reviewing this application against. And if the planning commission wishes to forward a positive recommendation, staff has developed suggested findings of fact, and they are as follows. Application to rezone approximately 156.81 acres of land to RC1 is in accordance with the goals and policies. As mentioned before, it's in the shoreline development area, and that's what that area under the comp plan is envisioned to develop into. That's been the plan since at least 2008, and that was reconfirmed in the 2018 update as well. Effect of the proposal will not be materially detrimental. Any potential issues associated with that would be mitigated at the time of specific development of the site. It is consistent with the surrounding area. Single-family residential uses exist or are planned for the general area and the lands to the northwest and south of the cider zone RC1. And this rezone is a logical extension of that designation. There is merit and value in the proposal for the community as a whole. The rezoned RC1 implements the comp plan. Proposed rezone is consistent with that plan designation, and the proposal is also consistent with the policies of the plan that encourage the development of a full range of environmental or residential environments. Conditions are required to be imposed in order to mitigate any significant adverse impacts from the proposal, but a concomitant agreement between the county and the petitioner is not required for this application. Future development on site shall comply with the county development regulations. Future development on site shall comply with local, state, and federal agency standards, roads, and access. Any new lots that may be created as a result of the proposed change will require access to a county road. Requirements include required permits, approach construction, minimum design standards, etc. Any mitigation fees required will be determined upon development of the property and will go towards future road upgrades if development continues to grow in the area. And then we have a recommended motion. And more than happy to answer any questions.
Does any commissioner have any questions of staff? Does the applicant or applicant's representative wish to speak?
Good evening, Planning Commission, County Staff, Caleb Stromstead, Octare Engineering. Thank you. Feels a little more comfortable. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Mr. Underwood. We're here in support of staff's decision. Don't really have anything to add except that we obviously want this to be approved and recommended to the Board of County Commissioners. Typically rezones, there are non-project actions. The applicant does have plans to develop his area into residential similar to the surrounding uses. And this would support that, so a recommendation to deny the applicant's wishes would hamper those development plans. So I'll be here to answer any other questions as they come up. Thank you.
No questions?
I have a quick question. On the property, the surrounding property, there's an RC5 to closer to the riverside.
Hold up, Manny. Is your red light on?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Now it is. It doesn't make much of a difference, but.
But it does for the
Does it?
recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the area, I believe, would be west of AP 20, around the RC5 area, closer to the river. As it develops, what are the plans for some of that steep slope area that sits in a rough, I think it was 300-400 feet in elevation from river level?
That's a good question. So this specific zoning application doesn't touch any of that. But in order to do any development on there, we'd have to do a geohazard assessment because of the steep slopes, and then go with the geotechnical recommendations for that. And then also we would be subject to the shoreline jurisdiction. So anything within 200 feet of the shoreline, we have to follow county shoreline regulations, which pretty much precludes any structures from being put in there.
Within
Layman's
200
terms.
feet. Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, and it could be more. So, just as Mr. Stromstad indicated, that those types of details are worked out during the subdivision. For example, they may, based on the geotech report, decide to hell with it, we're not doing those along there, it's just going to be cost prohibitive. Or put it, that's where they work out the details. There's no point in them proceeding with the subdivision planning and engineering and all those costs if the zone won't be changed. So
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
we try to minimize the expense before they know whether or not they're going to be able to move forward with a
Good.
proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any in-public testimony for the project? Any against or neutral? Is there any call-in public testimony?
No.
None. Email public testimony?
Nope.
None. Does staff have any final comments?
Nope.
No. Is there any clarification of public statements needed by anyone from the audience? No. The public testimony portion of public hearing for CZC 2022-01, SEPA 2022-07 is closed. Is there any discussion amongst the Planning Commission prior to entertaining a motion? I would entertain a motion. And it's in our notes and it's not up there.
Oh, yep, yep. I was waiting for that part.
Mr. Chairman, I would move forward ZC 2023-01 to the Board of County Commissioners, a positive recommendation with 5 findings of fact and 3 conditions of approval as provided for in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Vincent and moved by Commissioner Knifton that we forward to the Board of Commissioners a recommendation of approval for CZ 2022-01, SEPA 2022-07 with 5 adopted findings of fact and 3 conditions of approval. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mike Corrales?
Yes.
Mike Vincent?
Yes.
Stacy Knifton?
Yes.
Manny Gutierrez?
Yes.
Motion has been approved. Okay, now we will move on to item number 2. Item 2 is a public hearing for file SUB 2022-03, SEPA 2022-08, a proposal for a major amendment to a previously approved preliminary plat, SUB 2020-01. The project is to allow for the development of a single-family residential subdivision comprising of 2 parcels totaling 28.9 acres and creating 22 minimum 1-acre size lots. I declare the public hearing for SUB 2022-03, SEPA 2022-08 to be open at 7:26. May we have staff present the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, this is a subdivision development application for Rivercrest Estates. Effectively, what this has been, you saw this, I want to say 2 years ago, in 2020, but it was the full-blown subdivision, and at that time was proposed to be utilizing a public water source. This year, it was resubmitted, proposing to use exempt wells, and it's only a portion of the original property that we reviewed back in 2020. It's 2 parcels that actually have been in existence for a while, if I recall correctly. Even back then, they were separate parcels. But it's not that it's necessarily relevant, it's just some information. That's what I recall. The property is generally located east of the Columbia River, southeast of Larkspur Road, west of a South Columbia Basin Irrigation District Canal, which I believe is part of the Esquatzel, south of Sagemore Road, and north of and bounded by this Esquatzel Canal Drainage Canal. Rural shoreline development, and the current zoning is Rural Community 1, RC1. Was that just a rezone we did in 2020? I can't remember. Anyways, property size, current combined property size, both parcels is approximately 29.8. Okay, yeah, we did, 2020-01. As I mentioned, there's a deviation from the original, and it's what they call a major, therefore it goes through the full-blown subdivision review process. Irrigation is still being provided by the developer. It's not proposed that the exempt wells would be used for irrigation. Now, this is the 2 properties. This is the entire property that was originally reviewed, and this is the 2 that they're seeking to develop here. Orientation on this next one is sideways, so this is north. So envision this actually running this way. Access will be from these primary, the 2 point of access coming into the primary off of Columbia River Road. None of these lots will access directly onto Columbia River Road. They will need to access onto this and then come down. And then this is a turnaround. Whether or not it continues on will be dependent upon whether or not the rest of that property develops. So the big parcel back here, right, that's what that's showing there. So that's where that would continue back in. They also would have the option of creating other connections along that whole stretch because they don't have any lots planned at this point. Or, I mean, they're in this application. Picture of the current site, still, last I saw it, it was still orchards. These are from the assessor's page. This is what it looked like, the specific area. This is more representative of the specific area. It's basically got some, like the existing orchard. This is the Esquetzal Canal coming down, and it dumps into the river. This is a view towards the river from up around, right about up in there is where I took that picture from. March 24th, 2022, staff sent notices to technical agencies, property owners within 1 mile, and posted this in the Franklin County Graphic. Notice the site was also posted with a pending land use action sign and a secret determination of non-significance was entered into the SEPA registry. It's actually been, does this one get updated? We'll get to that. Can't remember. Like I said, I've got a lot of these on my desk because sometimes my mental, they get mixed in my head, so I apologize. But yeah, so this was done on the 24th.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an MP.
Okay, that's what I thought, but
Yeah,
yeah, so it was a mitigated determination of non-significance, which was submitted, not a DNS. I apologize. We received one public comment. It's these were material comments. That said, most of these items are being addressed either through existing regulation. The one that's not regards the unrestricted access to the Esquetzal Canal. However, that would be when the Skibbed or whoever operates that, both USBR and Skibbed were notified. Neither of them raised that as a concern. And so, though I appreciate that concern, it's one of those things I don't really have an ability to force anybody to do, especially when the owner and the operator of the facility doesn't request or require the applicant to do that. I can only implement those standards and regulations associated with my codes. I can't just do what I think is right. So whether this is needed or not, that's not our call. Like I said, that's more of the operator of the facility would need to make that request. They've been notified multiple times that there's activity in this area and they don't. And I don't know how long that's been there, but that's the one concern. Everything else that's listed here are already either required or through standard codes or through mitigation. We did receive comments from the following agencies: Department of Archaeology, Skibbed, Franklin County Public Works, Washington DOT, Department of Ecology, and Franklin County Assessor's Office. The SEPA mitigations are as follows. They'll have to do follow the recommendations of the geo report that was developed for the property. They'll need to be due to proximity to the river. They'll need a construction stormwater general permit. Best management practices, which are standard in our subdivision regarding dust. Initially in the SEPA, we had a SEPA recommendation of inadvertent discovery protocol on the property. However, the tribes have become much more active since this was first proposed. Therefore, and they came back, and then DAHP also came back and specifically said, no, we need you to change that. So in that role, they're the subject expertise or experts regarding this type of activity, and we kind of have to go with what they asked us to do. And so a professional archaeological survey will be required before construction can begin. Project shall comply with we're still in the SEPA mitigations. Project shall comply with fire code provisions as expressed in Franklin County Code 8.4. Drainage system shall be designed to capture and dispose of stormwater runoff on site. Separate source of irrigation shall be implemented and provided during the life of the project. If no outside irrigation service is available, a note shall be placed on the plat stating that no more than 1/2. However, like I said, that's the proposal is that the developer will provide or get, make sure that the site's irrigated. And no more than 5,000 gallons per day may be withdrawn from groundwater to serve the entire development. And a note shall be placed on the face of the plat regarding this limitation. Franklin County Planning Department staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation. And if that is the desire of the Planning Commission, we suggest the following findings of fact, conclusions of law, and suggested conditions of approval. That adequate provisions have been made for the public health, safety, and general welfare, and for open space, drainage ways, roads, alleys, or other public ways, water supply, sanitary wastes, parks, playgrounds, and other public needs. Comp plan app is in compliance with the comp plan. I'm not going to read through everything on here. Health, public will not be negatively because they have to abide by state septic systems. Water supply we already discussed. Access, as mentioned, all lots will have direct access on the interior streets and only access Columbia River Road from those two primary accesses that were shown on the earlier plat. Lots 1 through 11 shall be prohibited through either building of a wall or not a wall, a block fence, and or note will be placed on the plat so that each individual buying it will be notified that we shall never provide you direct access, like vehicular access or anything like that, from your property. And if they choose to do so without permission, it's a code violation and we'll come down on them like a ton of bricks, because that area and that road is not really a good idea to have just up to, 10 or 11 people juking out into that middle of that road. That's just not, nope. But when you look, you'll see that there's a lot of separation between those two access points and there's pretty clear view lines. So, and again, all of that stuff will be inspected and observed by Public Works, and they'll make sure that those requirements are met regarding the road design and stuff. Septic systems, they've got a voluntary agreement regarding school, regarding potential impacts to the school district, and as mentioned, stormwater will be retained on site. There will be a park dedication fee of $50 per lot. I already talked about it, irrigation, and everything will need to be designed and built to accommodate the 2018 International Fire Code and or as approved by Fire District 3. So basically they're the ones responsible for fighting the fires. Again, they're the subject experts, and we're not going to tell them how to do their job. If they're happy with an arrangement, then we'll roll with it. So it does contribute to the orderly development and land use patterns in the area. Public use and interest will be served. We need more houses. This will build more houses. The proposed subdivision does conform to the general purposes of any applicable policies or plans. In other words, meets the intent of the comp plan and the zoning code and the zone it's under, as well as subdivision requirements. Those are all things that were adopted by the Board of County Commissioners. That's what this kind of refers to. proposed subdivision does conform to the comp plan zoning requirements. Minimum or average lot size is 45, 714. But the smallest lot's on, I think it's like 43. I mean, it's over an acre a little bit, but there's nothing less than an acre. And so that requirement's met. Does conform to the subdivision ordinance. So conclusion of the law is that we received the application on February 23rd and it was deemed complete on March 3rd. Takes staff a little bit of time to get to it, go through it, make sure everything's there. And so it's not necessarily deemed complete when we accept it. It's a preliminary complete. If there's need for documents or something like that, we'll bird dog those from the applicant. And then once we get everything, then it's deemed complete. I didn't get to it for a few days and then but that, anyway, so it's been vested is the point. The vesting date's March 3rd. The SEPA process has been completed and MDNS. I must have loaded up the wrong freaking PowerPoint.
Yeah.
It's good. We had two working ones, and I thought for sure I loaded up the right one. But anywho, it's an MDNS, March 24, 2022, and then Planning Commission after this hearing. That's the rules there. Well, that's neat. I've never seen that happen before. Applicant shall comply with comments provided by the following agencies, because that's who we got them from, and collectively no more than 5,000 gallons of water per day. And recommended or suggested motion.
Does any commissioner have any questions of staff?
I have a question.
Annie?
I think there are lights on. On the proposed 22 lots, I'm going to go back to the irrigation question on that. On the agenda, page 4, under SEPA environmental review, line number 7, it talks about the residential well use for that. Will these lots have a orchestrator scheduled watering day for the use based on the 5,000 gallons per day usable for irrigation purposes?
They're proposing to bring in outside irrigation. So they're not proposing to use the exempt wells for irrigation. And frankly, I don't know how ecology tracks that. Should they be using, if they were going to be using exempt wells for irrigation and it's something that's under the purview of ecology to manage. Frankly, I think at some point you're going to see where they're going to start metering the wells, because that's the only way you would be able to track it, but there's no requirement to do that at this time, and we don't have the authority to require that as well. Because the water is actually owned by the state, it's not owned by the county. So the county has jurisdiction over all groundwater as well as surface waters that are designated as state waters or federal water too. They don't have authority over it, but they're kind of asked by the feds to manage the federal waters as well.
Does the applicant or applicant's representative wish to speak?
Good evening again. Caleb Stromstead, Octare Engineering. I represented Big Sky Developers, the applicant for this proposed subdivision. Like Mr. Broughton mentioned, this is a major amendment. Trimmed it down to 2 parcels. Those 2 existing parcels were a part of the original application. We did do a boundary line adjustment fairly recently to fit it in with the current plat boundaries. Like Mr. Broughton said, Mr. Gutierrez, the The irrigation will be delivered from a separate source, and so the proposed exempt wells will just be for domestic use, and the aggregate total of all the lots will be less than 5,000 gallons a day. And that's based on an average daily use per home, just domestic only, of about 220 gallons per day. That's how that math works out to be under that exempt status. There's a couple text changes I'd proposed to staff to make corrections before this goes to the Board of County Commissioners. The first one would be on page 16 of their staff report. Let's see.
16 in red.
16 in red, suggested condition of approval, looks like it's number 1L on page 16 in red on the PDF printout. Last sentence there references Fraser Road, that should just read Columbia River Road.
Thank you for that.
You bet. The next one is on the same page, Benton Franklin Health District, 2A. All lots shall, this is how it should read, all lots shall contain 1 gross acre and a half an acre of usable land after all easements and encumbrances are subtracted. That's a summarized version of the health district's letter. If you wanted to copy it verbatim, that's on page 30, and it's their first note on the bottom of their letter. And that's important that we get that one right, because the way the septic systems work is when you have a well on it, you gotta have 1 acre gross, but you have to have only a half acre of usable area. If we did a 1 acre of usable area like it's written here, we wouldn't be meeting their requirements, so just a typo.
And that's correct. When we review subdivision and whatnot, we utilize a gross analysis, not a net. So say you've got a 2 acre parcel, you want to subdivide it into 1 acre, but you've got utility easements in the front, you've got some road easements and all this stuff. The state has declared that the landowner will not be punished for county, or for basically public contribution, and that's what those are. Those easements and things are for utilities or the public access or right-of-ways. That's a kind of a gift, so that they're setting aside that land, so they're not going to be, oh, well, now all of a sudden you don't reach 1 acre each, ha ha ha. No. It doesn't work that way. It's based on the original gross, and so that's now even going forward. Say you've got, when you look at the taxable, which is what you see on the tax sifter assessor site, that's the taxable area, and maybe that 2 acre lot shows up as 1.78 because it's a corner, so it's got a lot of it taken up, and they're not taxed at. They're only taxed at a 1.78 property, but the gross for the property is 2 acres. The net is 1.78.
So is there a proposed layout of the wells on that plat?
If you go to the
actually,
last sheet on the slide, I'll point them out.
it's the little circles. Where'd you go? There it is. Oh, they don't show up as well on. Oh yeah, okay, they do.
So I can explain that. So those are
100-foot radius?
those are 100-foot radius well circles. So the way that we condition those is we actually record those on the face of the plat as a protective radius, and then we also make a note that the lot owner is required to put their well centered on that radius or modify the plat, and that just protects everybody's interest in the well setbacks. Especially when it's this tight like this, we have to put that forward thought into it.
So not that this matters, but does that mean that those 2 lots have to put the wells right next to each other on those circles?
Correct. They're
Put 'em
right
right against the property line?
right against the 5 or 10 feet
Okay.
off of that property line. That's
Okay.
correct. And really what it comes down to is, so the 100-foot setback is in regards to drain fields, so you can't have drain fields within that, and then within sewer lines it's 50 feet. And so it gives room for their house plumbing to be.
So it's gonna go back, that's more efficient, use of the lot.
Yeah, and structures can exist in of certain types.
Correct.
The septic system,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's different well setback requirements for different items for sure. There's another thing I'll point out is that as you're looking at the map, the top row of lots, which would be the east row of lots, they're also double frontage lots, very similar to the design we had on the last one, and that's by design because the grades between those lot pads are about 40 feet in elevation. So it'd be kind of similar to West Cliff over in Richland, where you've got single loaded roads just serving the top parcel. So even though those would be lots 12 through 22 have access to that road A, there's no physical way that they would be able to access that unless they had an elevator or some sort of escalator. That's all the comments I had tonight. Is there any other questions I'd be happy to answer?
Gonna be down that Columbia River Road, is that gonna change? It's like 50 miles an hour now. And
That's gonna be a public works call. When it hits certain thresholds, they'll make those changes. They can do it by petition, but it requires a petition. They're not gonna self-initiate a lowering of the speed limit. As this comes up and this area gets developed, we're already starting to look at things associated with Columbia River Road and looking at what needs to be done, if anything. But we started that a couple months ago. Actually, they've been doing it for a while, but they just ran a reanalysis, to make sure that they were looking at the right mitigation fees and things like that associated with it, and stuff like that. So it's on our radar, but it hasn't quite hit the threshold that pulls some of the triggers.
one thing that was really awesome, when we did that Clifford deal, we talked about that barricade coming down off the hill there, they put that in. I don't know if that was because of the action we had, but it sure does relieve a lot of trepidation about going off that cliff on the top of someone's house.
Agreed.
On an icy day, that could be super dangerous going down that, or up or down that hill. So I think they did a good job of setting that up.
You're talking about
That you
Clifford.
go down Columbia River Road, down towards the river, towards this subdivision, there was basically that hillside, that sharp curve as you
Where
go
you-
down.
Right where Sagemore turns into, is that where
South
you're
of
talking
that.
about?
You're
Or is
going
this
to Columbia
south?
River
Okay.
Road, it's where Sagemore comes together. With Columbia River Road,
Goes
Sagemore
up.
come together,
Yeah.
it goes down. You can literally go off of that cliff and land on somebody's house, before they put that barricade in
Oh, okay.
a month ago, something like that.
Really,
Yeah.
it's that recent? Okay.
Yeah, but it was just, I was just always amazed that, people really put any thought of that, because I've literally been down there when I live up on top of the hill on Birch, and I couldn't get back to my house because the roads were so icy. One time in 2017, I had to go back to the ditch road through fields and stuff, but it's really dangerous, and now it's looking good.
And that's, again, most of the especially when we get out that far north, these roads and things were designed for rural. And this is starting to develop. So like I said, it's on the radar. Hasn't quite hit certain thresholds for certain mitigations. It may be, and this one, there's no requirement there's a per lot contribution for impacts to Columbia River Road. And what we do is we take those, we pool all of that together, and we use that as our match to get funding. So, but the work it's all being kind of looked at, and it's continually being watched every time.
Yeah.
And like that new analysis that they just did was what I call a stack, where a lot of times they'll look and there's that subdivision, there's that subdivision. So they took a wider area and a proposed, every property that we knew of that was either rezoned or likely to, had the potential. If it was still AP 20, we didn't include that, but if it had been changed at all, and they did another analysis of that full area, they said that it's still an appropriate amount, is around $500 per lot. But it's always known that those impact fees, they are not intended to pay for the road, because we're talking millions to do the upgrades to Columbia River Road. What it does is it builds a bank that we're able to use as our match when we go for grants and things like that. As the threshold and the number of vehicles on that stretch increase, as those numbers shift, our rankings shift and various other things. And then another thing that the county's working on, I don't know where it's at in process, but we are developing a countywide master road plan, I guess you could call it. So what that does is it kind of sets prioritization of roads, but it also discusses future roads, non-existent roads. It's what the city did for their section of the comp plan, or the transportation plan. We're working on one of those for the entire county. We, meaning the county. Public Works is doing almost all
Well,
of it.
typically, those roads that can like Birch, Sagemore, Columbia River Road, are 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and they're used to, there's a lot of traffic. I can see an analysis of that maybe bearing out as somebody's house is going, and maybe slow down and do something else.
That would,
I mean, it's really and once you get congestion and stuff going down there, it's a different story than just a thoroughfare to connect one major road to the other.
yeah.
I did have one procedural question. Are the bylaws still the same as far as a quorum goes? We ran into this issue last year. Are we still rolling with that?
Yep.
So we'll not have a recommendation, but we'll have a.
No, we do.
We do, we have a quorum.
We have the well, it depends on how they vote.
Okay.
We
It has
do
to
have
be
it.
unanimous.
It's 4. It's just
It's
that,
the
it needs to
unanim,
be.
is that, okay.
It's 4. So as long as this application gets 4 to approve, then it would
Then we're
move
good.
forward with a recommendation. If it doesn't, we'll shoot again and try to get, another run to see if anybody changes their mind. And then we'll move forward with whatever the results of that will be.
Thanks for clarifying. Thank you.
Is there any public testimony for or against from the public? Any call-in or email testimony? No. Does staff have any final comments?
Nope.
No. Is there any clarification of public statements needed by anyone from the audience? The public testimony portion of public hearing for SUB 2022-3 SEPA 2022-8 is closed. Is there any discussion amongst the Planning Commission prior to entertaining a motion? I will entertain a motion.
Sorry, just a second. I know there's a better way to do it because there's a slider, but it doesn't seem to be functioning. Whoop. Gone too far.
I move that Franklin County Planning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the 6 findings of fact, the 4 conclusions of law, and 6 conditions of approval, detailed in the staff report and approved case file, sub SUB 2022-03-SEPA 2022-08.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Gutierrez and seconded by Commissioner Vincent that we forward to the Board of Commissioners a recommendation of approval for SUB 2022-03, SEPA 2028-08 with 6 adopted findings of fact and 4 conclusions of law and 6 conclusions of approval. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mike Crowell,
Yes.
Mike Vincent,
Yes.
Stacy Knifton,
Yes.
Manny Gutierrez.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion has been approved.
Okay, motion has been approved. Item number 3 is a discussion and vote on the updated Planning Commission bylaws. Are we going to have a staff report or just discussion on them?
We've actually had these draft bylaws for over a year. I don't know, I mean, so I don't really have a presentation to make. We've looked at them. If folks are comfortable with that, if there were any changes they wanted to make, we can have that discussion. Staff was going to recommend having the planning commission make its decision via resolution, and I still will, but what I think I'm going to do is not really get into that right now. I will bring that forward at a later date, and assuming the current version or the approved version, the new version that we have is adopted.
Yeah, they are.
Then we will, I will just seek to add that at a later date. I've got to work some things out with it, and I got to make sure I'm not creating a nightmare for everybody. So I'd like to bring that element back at a later date.
Are we still doing the suggestion for moving the commission, or planning commission?
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Moving
As you
them.
can see, for some reason, everybody forgets that we meet here every first Tuesday of the month. The commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners seeks to do a evening meeting at least quarterly, and they always really want to do it on the first Tuesday of each month. So one thing that was asked is whether the Planning Commission would have any interest in changing the date to, say, Wednesday. But I think, again, that's a discussion we need to have. Maybe those will be the two things we talk about. We've got a few months because they just had their evening meeting, so they shouldn't have another one for a couple months.
So you're going to talk with the commissioners.
I want to double check with County Administrator Johnson, Keith Johnson, to see one, whether it's an issue, or would it be easier for that, or just as easy for them to just always make sure they pick the second two. So I want to collaborate with him on that. Right now, if you guys if you're not ready or don't feel comfortable voting on the bylaws and would want more time to review,
Has everybody read them?
Yeah.
Is everybody comfortable with them? Then we're going to vote on them. Okay. Does staff have any final comments? Okay, may we have a roll call vote on the bylaws?
Mike Crowell,
Yes.
Mike Vincent,
Yes.
Stacy Knifton,
Yes.
Manny Gutierrez,
Yes.
Peter Harpster.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion has been approved.
Very well.
so what I will do is I will send out clean copies. I know you have them, but this will be your official copy. The one I will be sending out. You'll probably get that this week. Okay.
There is no audience,
Oh,
so
wow, we left.
we're done.
Real quick, though, remember the subdivision, Title 16? We brought that since then, and then the next meeting, 3 new members joined the Planning Commission. And I think Melinda wasn't there either. So, May 24th, we'd like to hold another workshop regarding the Title 16 update. And is that okay for me to go ahead and move forward with that? I don't want to go through the process of advertising and then
On the
only end
next
it-
meeting.
No, May 24th.
Oh,
And then we'd have, See, technically, workshops are supposed to be held on the last Tuesday of every month. This would be a workshop on Title 16. Otherwise, if we don't, if we hold off, it starts delaying the process because we only meet monthly. And then the hope is to have the public hearing, if I remember right, in June or July. July, I think. It was July. We would have a public hearing in July on the matter. I would also like to schedule with this, in June, and I'll have to get together with Nicole as to which day she prefers, and then I'll have to look at the agenda. But we may have a public workshop as well where I would like to take feedback from the public on it. So she just sent me a public participation thing late last week. I've reviewed it, and I'm okay with the proposal in the process. Very similar to when we kicked off the comp plan update. I'm sorry, that was on the SMP that she sent me. I apologize, that public participation program. That was for the Shoreline Master Program. So May 24th, we're looking to do another workshop on that. We may also add the Shoreline Master Plan. I don't know where she's at exactly on that, or whether she would want to do that, just to kind of do a brief introduction. But long story short, I'd like to schedule a May 24th workshop. The specific items will be determined shortly, but
So with the workshop on the 24th, would we still be meeting on that second Tuesday of June on the 7th?
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, because we already got some items that we,
Yeah, June 7th is a guarantee. The 24th, I am notifying y'all of this, that we're going to be holding a workshop. And
That's fine.
I would prefer full attendance, that way we don't have to keep going over things the same, keeping people, when people miss those meetings, like last time we had 3 and 2 people weren't even on the commission yet. Manny showed up, but that's just because he was the early guy and I was able to let him know, oh yeah, and tonight we're doing this thing. But when members miss, then what's the first thing they start doing when they show back up? They start asking basically the consultant to rehash everything that everybody already heard, and I'd really like to minimize that because it just takes up time, and time is not a luxury we have with the amount of stuff that we really need to get done in the next 2 years.
Okay, 24th it is.
Thank you.
All right.
Same time, so I missed that.
It's the same. It'll be 7. Yeah.
All right.